family man, bow tie guy, impassioned leader, thinker. These are the words that come to mind when we're thinking of ways to describe our first speaker. He's been a longtime champion and advocate of the RSPA who's spent a long career in the industry. He brings his passion, energetic leadership, and experience to every project that he's a part of to our members' benefit. And I am thrilled to invite to the stage Stephen Bergeron from APG Cash-Jar.
Good morning. This is, oh boy, it was left over from this morning in the dry run. So we'll keep going back and forth. Okay. This is an honor, a privilege, and I'm scared to death, which you guys probably find hard to believe because I've done this so many times. But I'm going to challenge how we think about life. Throw everything you know out the door, clear your mind, and let's go on a journey. How many of us in this audience are a glass half full? How about glass half empty? How about both? It really doesn't matter. It depends on the day, doesn't it? And that's what I want us to think about, okay? I could have picked a quote from Cicero or some Greek philosopher, but what I decided to do was I found something recently by Drew Barrymore. And she says, life is interesting. In the end, some of our greatest pains become our greatest strengths. Think about that for a moment. Attitude, it all starts with attitude. When I was a little kid, my parents told me I made mountains out of molehills. As a young adult, later in life, I was told I had a magnifying mind and that I had my glasses on backwards. As an adult, probably with some gray hair, I was told I suffered from cognitive distortion. That cost me a lot of money. But the bottom line is, I have the ability to make a big deal out of everything. And that's what we have to be cognizant of. So what is the difference between good and bad? It's really all about perspective, isn't it? How many of us had a good show? How many of us had a bad show? How do we know the difference between good and bad anyways? Ever go to a trade show and we're gonna get 25 leads, we're gonna get 50 leads, and we come out with just a couple? Is that a bad show? But one of those leads that you just got became the biggest deal of your year. Not only was it the biggest deal of your year, they became a lifetime customer. So now I ask you again, was that a good show or a bad show? There is no difference in my mind. How about 2007, 2008, when the economy took a tank? Business stunk. You couldn't close anything. You couldn't do anything right. But you hunkered down, you went back to the office with your exec team, and you redefined who you were gonna be. And all of a sudden, coming out of 2000 and 2008, you skyrocketed. Life took off. So was 2007 a bad thing or a good thing? You reinvented yourself. It's all about the perspective. I have bad days, there's no doubt in my life. But I have the 10 best days of my life in my back pocket at all times. And they're pretty simple. I got married, yes, June 7th, 1980. We had a son, we had a daughter, we have a 5-year-old granddaughter. Awesome moments. But I'm gonna share a secret. One of my awesome days is the death of my father. I'm serious. He'd been diagnosed with cancer. He went to the hospital, he came home, he really wanted to die at home. My wife and I drove to my parents' house, the house I grew up in, and at the foot of the bed that morning was my mom, my sister, myself, and Kathy. And we said goodbye to my father. It was awful. But for the months before, his eyes were really cloudy. He didn't recognize us all the time. He was in tough shape. And all of a sudden, after we all said goodbye, his eyes opened up. They were crystal blue, piercing blue. He smiled, he reached out, and he took his last breath. Powerful moment. A calmness came into that room that was overwhelming. So what does that mean? Last June, both of my in-laws became terminal, and within 12 days of each other, they both passed. But I was able to sit with my mother-in-law, 93 years old, and share with her that experience with my father. And she calmed down, and she relaxed, and she started her journey. So I ask you, that event 18 years ago with my dad, was that a good thing or a bad thing? It was horrific. I still try to pick up the phone and talk to him, and there's nobody on the other end. But the reality is, it helped me. When my son was young, he got run over by a lawnmower. It was awful. We had a doctor that we called Dr. No Poke, because he was a family psychologist. You know, no stitches, no surgery, he just talked to us. And he told my wife and I that this event is either going to tear you apart or bring you closer together. Spin forward a bunch of years, Kyle's in a very bad situation with his marriage. His life's fallen apart. We have to hospitalize him. And Kathy and I hunker down, unconditional love with the kids. And we get through it. A year after that event, our son, who is a millennial, sends us an email called, "Phew." And he pours his heart out to us about the events of the last year, thanking us. He's a changed person. So had we not learned how to take all of these events and taught Kathy and me to hang on for dear life, we wouldn't have been there for our son. More importantly, we wouldn't have been able to celebrate. We're not quite up there with Bob, but we celebrated 36 years of marriage this past June. It's these events that have taught me how to live. Couple more points. Mentoring. Everybody in this room is a mentor, whether we know it or not. Okay? And so what that really means is Brianna, Chelsea, Justin, you're also mentoring us. As much as we think we're helping you, you're helping us. You know, I listened to Dave Sanders last night. The stuff that was a big issue in 1972 still remains a big issue in 2016. It's all about technology, and you guys are teaching us how to use it and how to move forward with it. Is he a good mentor or a bad mentor? Again, it doesn't matter. I've learned as much from the people that have thrown cell phones up against boardroom walls as I have from people that have told me, take this word-processed memo, yes, I go back that far, and go back and think about the solution, not just the problem. I learned a lot from Bob. To my father, who taught me it's all about the people underneath you. My dad, every Thanksgiving, would make a turkey, stuffing, and all of the fixings and serve everybody in his office. It's not about me, it's about we. Ton of mentors. My last topic on this whole thing about the Mosaic is balance. Now, somewhere out there is Kathy sitting in the room. There's a rumor that I'm a type A personality, and that's probably fair. I have no idea what balance means. I struggle with it every day of my life. Is it family? Is it personal? Is it work? Is it work? Is it family? Is it personal? I don't know. I know it's somewhere mixed up in all of that. Over the years, being 59, I've missed a lot of big stuff because I didn't have the balance right in my head. So I challenge us all, think about balance. Think about your work. Think about your family. Think about all of that stuff. So at the end of all of this, I am convinced that all there is a glass and there's water in it. It's not half full. It's not half empty. There's a glass and there's water. Now, if you were here last night, there's probably a little beer in it or a little bit of wine in it, but that's all it is. I was going through a rough period in my life a number of years ago, and I happened to pick up a piece, and it talked about our life as a mosaic. So for this talk, I decided to go online and find out what is a mosaic. And according to the Oxford Dictionary, and this is about the only thing I have to read, is a mosaic is a noun. It's a picture or pattern produced by arranging together small pieces of stone, tile, or glass. It's colorful, it's a variegated pattern. Most importantly, it's a combination of diverse elements forming more or less a coherent whole. So I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes. Go back through your life. Go backwards. Look at the good days. Look at the bad days. Look at the ups. Look at the downs. These are the chips or the glass of your mosaic. But when we focus too much on any one day, we lose perspective. Makes no sense. Why is that day so awesome? Why is that day so horrific? We lose perspective. Now come back. Start to back up. And that's when we see the mosaic. And we see the beauty in our life, the beauty in our mosaic. Now we are able, in part of the definition, this combination of diverse elements form more or less the coherent whole. I am here today as I am because of all of the good, because of all of the bad. If I had only good, I wouldn't know how to compare it. If I had only bad, it would be meaningless. But now comes the really cool part in this whole thing about mosaic. Jim Roddy's mosaic touches mine. Okay? Kathy's mosaic touches mine. Kelly's does. Mark Olson's, Mark Fraker's, Brianna Brown, Chelsea. All of you are part of my mosaic at one way or another. So some of those dark days, I have learned over time, were horrific for me. I've actually had people come up to me and say, you know, when Kyle was hurt, you handled it with such dignity that I learned that I can get through anything. And all of a sudden that day isn't so bad for me anymore. I wish to hell it hadn't happened, no doubt in my mind. So you're always a power of example. So a couple of things and then I am done. Thank you for allowing me to be a chip in your mosaic. The size, the color, the texture of that chip is really up to you guys. There's a behaviorist that I read from time to time, and it's Soren Kierkegaard. And he says life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Enjoy the creation of your mosaic. Have fun for the last couple of hours of this event. And thanks for letting me occupy some of your morning. Thank you all.